There it is. Welcome to our webinar today called Supporting Writers Across Platforms with Co-Writer Universal. And my name is Rose Roscoe, and I'm instructing as a part of Special Ed Technology Center. And we have a guest with us today, Dave Butler. So we'll introduce ourselves. Hi, Dave. I was just going to point out for those of you who want to dial in audio, you see that's on the screen there. And then we do have a link to our handout here with the green link. It's at tinyurl.com. So if you have a chance to just write that out really quick, you're able to get our handout ahead of time. We will also be sending the slides to you after the webinar, as well as some Word docs, some resource docs. So with that, we'll get started. So again, my name is Rose Roscoe, and I'm an Assistive Technology Specialist for Special Ed Technology Center and also for Bellevue School District this year. And I've been doing assistive technology for about 30 years, partly as an OT and then probably for 20 years as an AT specialist. And I will say that I've been using Co-Writer probably since close to its inception. I mean, way back in Co-Writer 4. And it's just been one of the most stable and consistent and really the most effective tool that I've found in my career. So I really enjoy teaching it because it's a great tool. And to make sure I get all the latest and greatest news about Co-Writer, I invited Dave Butler to join us today from Don Johnston. So I'll let him introduce himself.
Thanks, Rose. So I'm excited to be here. As Rose mentioned, my name is Dave Butler. I am the Educational Support Specialist for the state of Washington. I've been with Don for the last 18 years. So I've seen a few versions of Co-Writers come and go. And so I'm excited to share some of the latest and greatest, but also just make sure that everybody has just a basic, comfortable working knowledge of Co-Writer today.
Thank you. And I just wanted to point out that Sue Wright is assisting today from the background, and she put in a live link to the tiny URL. Thank you, Sue. That was a great idea. So it's there in the chat window for you if you need it. So we wanted to start out by just finding out what programs are you using for word prediction for your students. You might be trying the new Microsoft Word Prediction. You might be using Co-Writer or WordQ. You might be using word prediction built in on an iPad. So we'd love to just have a quick survey here and see the results of what tools are you currently using. Or maybe you don't have a good word prediction tool and you're looking to find one. So this is an open, yeah, there you go, a comment box. So I'm going to skip to the results and we'll just watch people's responses come in. So far we have Word on the iPad, Co-Writer and word prediction on the iPad, Co-Writer 7, Clicker 7. Yes, Clicker also has word prediction. Co-Writer on the iPad and Co-Writer extension. Co-Writer and word prediction on the iPad. Great. Okay, so it sounds like most of you are familiar with Co-Writer, which is great. And we're also here to answer your questions today about that. If you have questions that specifically about the program, please put them in the chat window, especially since we have Dave here. We have an expert available. So. All right. So for the Special Ed Tech Center, our whole focus this year is on Universal Design for Learning, and I'm hoping you're all familiar with that term now. Our whole fall SETC conference is focused on UDL, and we also are aware that OSPI has also chosen to really focus on promoting Universal Design for Learning across Washington State. So just looking at these three principles again, I'm not going to go in detail, but I want to just point out the highlighted assess. When you're planning a lesson, offering students multiple means of action and expression so that they can show you what they know, that's where Co-Writer is going to fall in today, and to the multiple means of action and expression. And it's really a wonderful tool, and we have a slide later even talking about we're pretty much aware that it's the only tool allowed on the state SBAC testing. So we'll talk about that a little later too. And then just talking again, looking at universal accommodations as we're trying to plan for all students and plan ways that our students can be included in the general ed classroom whenever possible. For them to be successful, we want to provide multiple options to access core curriculum materials. So that first step is how do they get access to the content, to listen to it, with audiobooks or digital books with screen readers, to help them with comprehension, translation, text leveling. Don Johnson has another tool that addresses that in Snap and Read, but we're not going to be focusing on that today. But that's the first step, is that they get the content in. And again, in order to express themselves, we need to provide scaffolded writing support to our students, such as word prediction, word banks, and speech recognition. One of the things I'm excited about, the new Co-Writer Universal, that's been around a couple of years now, but it has this speech recognition built in now, and we've been waiting for that, and it's so nice to have that available alongside. And I'll let Dave talk a little more too about word bank, especially with the Co-Writer Universal extension. There's a second piece with word banks if you don't have the full desktop software. So you want to say anything about that, Dave, as long as I just mentioned it?
No, I think you've kind of hit it. I mean, word bank would be kind of a sister to Co-Writer, but one is not required to have the other as far as that goes, and it kind of serves two different student populations.
Yeah, okay. And then just, again, as a background, looking at what are the advantages of accessible reading and writing tools across devices. So when you are at your district and trying to convince administrators, and why do you need these kinds of specialized tools that make content accessible, both reading and writing? And here's some rationale you might use. So I know you guys probably know this, but we have to be articulating to our administration why we need these tools, because they're multimodal. You can see it, hear it, interact with it. You can speak, with the word speech recognition. You can adapt it. It has built-in accommodations to support all learning styles. So again, Co-Writer is not just for someone who's dyslexic, but even someone who's physically impaired and needs to just have fewer keystrokes to get their words out and saving keystrokes. Someone that needs to hear it read back as they're typing it. So all those things are built into the Co-Writer. And then it addresses diverse learner needs. So Co-Writer isn't just for kids only in special ed. Any kid who might be a language learner, any physical limitations, students on 504 plans, students with behavior issues who are just shutting down with writing. So this is why I'm really helping people to think through, how do you advocate for these kind of accessible tools as a UDL tool for everyone, for the whole district? And then the other great thing about Co-Writer that's unique is this option to use tools on a variety of devices and platforms. Co-Writer pretty much is available on iPads, as many of you mentioned, on desktops, and also as a Chrome extension. And recently, and it's been a struggle, but it now is working with Office 365, which was a big barrier we had to cross. And I worked really closely with Don Johnston, and Dave was one of them I talked to on a frequent basis. Here's what we need, Dave, and I'm happy to report there's a way to make that work now. So, and it just results in all these things: improved classroom performance, student achievement on assessments, which we'll talk about again later, increased engagement and productivity, and then increasing their independence. They're not going to be dependent on that paraeducator sitting next to them, having them dictate their thoughts to somebody else. They can actually type them themselves. So just as a quick screenshot, again, Co-Writer is a UDL tool for student expression, just one of many. And this is just an example again. It doesn't always have to be with Word. You can be out on a website, like this is a screenshot of a blog that a teacher is using out on a website, and the student, it even works right there online within a website. So there's many ways it works in email, all kinds of word processing documents, and across devices. So it truly is universal, which is one of the beauties of Co-Writer. Dave, any comments?
Nope, I think you're good. Just wanted to ask you,
okay.
Did you remember to start the recording?
Yes.
All right,
Thank
perfect.
you. So talking about the Co-Writer Universal features again, we mentioned earlier it's available across devices, which is unique. It tracks student writing data on writing time and vocabulary usage. This is big. I wonder how many of you have actually used the data capabilities of Co-Writer Universal. if you have, I'd love to hear about it in the chat window. But that is another unique thing about Co-Writer that's really powerful. And then you can set up a student profile available on any computer using a unique login. So your student can just go from one device to another, and as long as they log in with their setup profile, they can change devices, go from a computer at school to a computer at home to an iPad. So that's another beauty of having the student profile set up for the data and also for the versatility. And then again, my favorite new feature is the speech recognition built into Co-Writer. So how often can you dictate and use word prediction type all at the same time? I mean, that's what Co-Writer is allowing you to do now, and Dave is going to demonstrate some of this a little bit later. So I'm just stopping to see if there's any questions. I think it's just logistics so far. Awesome.
Nothing in the chat window.
Okay, so these are going to be some examples. So we're going to show you some examples of Co-Writer in action and how it's being used, and then we're going to demonstrate some of the tools for you. So this is one of my colleagues was using Co-Writer in a small group with elementary 5th and 6th graders, and there's probably 5 or 6 kids in this group, and the speech therapist was leading this group with the OT or the COTA, and they were kind of doing some training and skill development up front in this small group. And you can see in the screenshot that there's they actually use a paper graphic organizer in this incident to kind of brainstorm a little bit first. Then they started writing their ideas with Co-Writer with their little reference. So they kind of did some pre-brainstorming about what they were going to write. And of course, you could do this digitally if you had a digital graphic organizer as well. But in this case, you know, they're kind of doing low-tech and high-tech. But the goal here is really that Co-Writer use would transition to the general ed classroom, and the special ed teacher would also start using it in their writing group. But it kind of started with pre-teaching a small group and then having students go out and start sharing and then facilitating the teachers in using it. And it's interesting because Dave has a video a little bit later where, you know, the student was actually teaching teachers, and we'll let you see that later. But really, our students can be powerful teachers themselves. So it doesn't always have to be us teaching others. Training our students first and having them teach others is another great idea. A few years ago, when we were first trying to get out Co-Writer Universal, I came across a teacher here. This is a special ed teacher. And I apologize, I did have to white out the face of that young lady because it's been a few years and I want to make sure I could show the slide. But she gave me these quotes on when her students were using Co-Writer, they had really great dramatic changes and improvements and were feeling really successful. And the cool part about this class lesson is she was in a gen ed 5th grade classroom. And then her and the teacher, they had the kids broken up, so there was at least one special ed student in each small group. So the girl you see with the gray spot on her face, she's actually the special ed student using Co-Writer. The rest of the group, they only had one computer for their group, and she was showing the others how to write with Co-Writer. So she was teaching her peers, modeling this really cool new tool. They were engaged. She was excited to be in the group and show them something she'd been learning. And it was a really great collaboration. So they were really shining, and it was just great to see that collaborative. This is truly, I think, UDL in action, one of the few times I've seen it. So you can see you can read some of those quotes on your own, but really lots of great improvements from just emotionally feeling better about their writing to just writing more complex and longer essays. And then this is the general ed teacher on the flip side who had a slightly different angle on this in that she's looking at her whole classroom. So just having these special ed kids integrated with Co-Writer and computers, did that help all of her students? And she really did feel like it motivated students, increased their access to materials, increased participation, especially by the kids who normally would have been sitting back and waiting for their general ed peers to do all the writing and talking. And then just this ability to work together with a variety of people, with a variety of abilities. And then just the importance of integrating technology into the classroom, especially the general ed classroom, to reach all students. So the other thing I like about this is you don't necessarily have to have a one-to-one computers in order to have an impact here. This is just one computer per group of 4 or 5 students. So if you're not there yet in your district, you may be helping think of creative ways to use, 5 or 6 computers for the whole class. And finally, this young lady, actually several of the individual students in that class gave me quotes. So you can see the 2 on the left. This student said, if I want to say something and don't know how to spell a word, co-writer helps me to find words I can spell. Another young lady said, co-writer helps me get better at typing and writing words faster that I don't know. And then the young lady on the right, I'm going to show you a video of her. And I had a whole long video, but this clip talks about how excited she was to be writing a story. So you got to listen to this. I'm going to show her video next.
Do you like writing now that you're using co-writer?
Yes, right now, me and my sister are writing a story. I'm doing most of the writing.
Oh, that's
because
great.
She heard that I'm doing more writing, and it's really fun.
That's great. Well, great. Well, thank you so much. You have a great day.
Okay. So I think what was so cool about that is you can see her whole confidence improve, whether it's co-writer or some other tool that you're giving her, some other choice that really helps her to overcome her barrier. She was excited about that and had fun, and now she loves to write, which is new for her. It used to be a struggle. So I'm going to let Dave take over and talk about a few other examples.
All right, awesome. Thanks so much, Rose. Hey, Rose, Sue had typed in that the bit.ly URL was not working, so can you possibly retype that and send that to her so she can share it out again?
Yes, I will do that. In fact, I might just create a new one. Okay, thanks.
Perfect. So, I will be the first to tell you that regardless of the technology, what's important is not the tool. The use of the tool is really what's important. And so often, I'm always asked, how do I get my teachers to use these tools? And I think the key for use of tools is co-writer is really meant to be a student tool. Your students are really using the tool on a daily basis. Teachers are not. And so I think it's really important that when you actually are sharing news of co-writer or really any technology out there, I think it's really important to share it with the end users. And with co-writer, that is the students themselves. So this is actually a picture from a school district in New Jersey. So these are elementary students that are coming from the Brewster Central School District in New Jersey, and they are demonstrating co-writer and Snap and Read to the instructional technology specialist there at the school. The students became part of a tech team that helped roll out the technologies in the classroom. And this is especially a valuable source for our students with disabilities. What an awesome opportunity for them to get to be the experts and know something in the classroom that nobody else does. And so I really love those tech teams as an option at that point. Here are just a couple of pictures. This is actually a school district in Texas where at the beginning of the school year, students brought all of the new teachers that were hired in. So before school, these tech teams, so the student-led tech teams came in and they were actually demonstrating and using the tools with all of the new staff that were hired in the school district. And it's a great way to, again, be able to bring out that mastery and really improve student attitude and demonstrate that mastery. And so I think that that's a really important option. Here's pictures from a school district in Mishawaka, Indiana. And again, here we have a student who is up in the front of the class, and they're actually teaching teachers how to use the tool, while the AT specialist, here's Jim over in the corner, is standing back and watching and letting Caden go through and show this. And so I think that that's just a really powerful tool and allowing that. And so let's see if we can't go ahead and play what that video would look like.
And so if I turn it off, you see that bar goes away and it's not blue. Then if you turn it on, it turns on to blue, and then everything So Wikipedia is used in a lot of things that students.
So again, I think that's really interesting, and what a powerful opportunity for that student to now be the expert in the classroom. And so I really like that student-led coaching model as a way to start to introduce the technology. So we're going to start to get into Co-Writer itself and, talk about, well, what is Co-Writer? Many of you have probably used Co-Writer in the past, and so real simply, Co-Writer gives you the words and the phrases you're intending as you type, even if your grammar and your spelling are way off. All you have to do is simply type a letter or two, and Co-Writer predicts the words and the phrases in real time to really help you be able to get your thoughts down on paper. Before I start to get into that, I wanted to show you some before and after writing samples using Co-Writer. So this is an actual student writing sample. Ella, who is our student here, she's an avid reader, but his writing and spelling has been miserably difficult, according to Ella. When Ella was 7, her teacher had been focusing on using handwriting without tears, and this is a picture of her writing at that point in time. Co-Writer was then introduced to Ella, and now this is what Ella's writing looks like now. So in just a few weeks of practicing keyboarding and using Co-Writer, writing became much easier for her than just simple paper pencil. This is the beginning of a story she wrote for fun over several hours, just one weekend, using only the support of Co-Writer. And so you can see just the difference that makes for that particular student. Here's another example. This is Frank. Frank's handwriting was illegible to his teachers, his peers, and often his family. Throughout extended efforts of his teacher, Mrs. Dobson, and his speech pathologist, Frank used Co-Writer to create a recipe book for his family. Throughout his creative project, his teachers saw Frank's attitude shift from I can't to I can write. And now he has that I can write learning attitude. And his teachers talk about how Frank struggled terribly with his spelling and vocabulary, and how they struggled in reading his writing on tests and each day, and they could see his frustrations mounting. And so they really came together and found a tool in this particular case that worked for Frank. And so you can see some of that before and after examples. I want to share another story with you. This is actually a story of an adult, but her struggles with learning started very early. And so I want to go ahead and play this video. This one's going to be a little bit longer, but I think you will find it to be pretty engaging.
Hi, I'm Pitar Japay, and I'm extremely dyslexic. I was told I would never graduate high school. I'd probably not be able to go on to college or really have a job that would allow me to be a productive member of society. By the 3rd grade, it was clear that I wasn't able to read the way the other students were. It was almost like looking at a blank piece of paper, and I just cried. I remember that year I came home and I cried every single night because I knew I was smart and I knew the material, and I felt like I was smart. I was told that I was smart, but I couldn't read. And that's such a fundamental part of academia. There wasn't any time left for me to continue to fail. And that first year teacher she called in a meeting with the entire school-based support team, and she said, I don't know what's going on, but we need to get her tested. And that was really what started me on this journey to finding a solution or finding a way for me to be an active, productive member of society. Thanks to a great family, great educators, assistive technology, multisensory education and accommodations, I was really able to navigate academia and in the worlds beyond that. And so I did graduate high school with the New York State Regents diploma. I went on to attend Adelphi University, where I graduated magna cum laude along with a whole bunch of other honors. I then became the program director at Everyone Reading, the New York branch of the International Dyslexia Association, and then chief of staff for New York State Assembly member Joanne Simon before leaving to attend law school. I love co-writer because I am able to, I believe my topic dictionary is set to all versions of law, law and order, everything that has to do with law. And so it picks up on some of the things that traditionally an average spell check wouldn't. When it came to Snap and Read, I started with their text-to-speech feature. And that's really where I felt that I needed it the most. And then from there, when I began to feel comfortable with this particular extension and using text-to-speech, I started branching out to other features that came within Snap and Read. The cool thing about all these features is that no one knows that I'm using it. And so especially when you're at work or you're in the classroom or in the library, I don't have an extra device, an extra tool that makes me stand out from my peers. My motto in life has been to never give up, because I know it works and I have the tools to do it.
About this last spring, Patara graduated from Syracuse University Law School with honors, and she talks about the use of co-writer and being able to use those topic dictionaries for her to be able to do the writing that was required in law school. And so in the link that was provided, in that bit.ly link that was provided, then there is a screening tool. You know, oftentimes people ask me, how do I know who would be a great candidate for co-writer? And so here's a really simple, quick, one-page tool. And basically it says, does your student exhibit this characteristic? Here are examples of that characteristic. And then they might possibly be co-writer users. And so that handout is included as part of the bit.ly URL. So please feel free to use that. Share that with teachers, and they have the option then to do a real quick screening tool to determine, is their student a co-writer candidate? So what makes co-writer so powerful and makes it really the industry standard for word prediction? What makes co-writer is so many different things, starting with data collection. And data collection is really important, especially for SBAC accommodations, because while co-writer is an allowable accommodation for the SBAC, one of the caveats to that is that the student has to have access to it throughout the school year. And how do you prove and demonstrate that? So the data that is collected by the tool is your way. So you will know not only as a group how much your students are using co-writer, when were they given access, and you can even date range the data so you can know in this 6-month period or this school year how much the student is actually using the tool. Because what a novel idea that we would give students access to accommodations throughout the school year that they would be using on the state assessment test. Also included in that, to what makes co-writer different, is just simply looking at flexible spelling. Flexible spelling allows students to spell phonetically, be inventive spellers, and still get the words that they are looking for. And the difference is it will do it right out of the box. So we have already done the hard work for you in that. You will also have new to co-writer universal Neuron word prediction. Neuron word prediction is a combination of both phrase prediction, so you see multi-word predictions here, as well as it has the ability to predict syntactically. So if I were to write the word Abraham, the very next word without striking another key is going to be Lincoln, because that's the most common word that would follow the word Abraham. and it knows that I am talking about Abraham Lincoln. So not only will I have Abraham and Lincoln in my prediction list without a topic dictionary, but I'll also have words that are associated with Lincoln, such as president or Civil War, that would be available, Emancipation Proclamation. And we'll get to that and we'll demonstrate that. You still have your topic dictionaries. We think the topic dictionaries are one of the most important supports of co-writer, but yet what we've noticed is less than 15% of the time when a student is using co-writer are they actually using a topic dictionary. And so to try to improve that, neuron prediction will help that, but we've also made how you make your topic dictionaries even easier, and I'll show you how to do that. And then we'll get into a little bit of the aspects. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually go ahead and share my screen, and we're going to actually get into using co-writer. So here's co-writer. Now I'm using the Chrome extension. I'm actually on a Macintosh computer, and I'm using the Chrome web browser, so I'm using the Chrome extension. I could just as easily be using the Chrome packaged app, or I could be using a Chromebook, or even possibly an iPad and using the iOS app. So co-writer, for those of you who know, very familiar with this. And the beauty of co-writer in the 18 years, and so co-writer 4000 first was the very first co-writer version that I was familiar with back in 2000 when I started with Don Johnston. And while co-writer has gone through a numerous number of iterations and hopefully improvements, the basic core of co-writer continues. And so if you know any of the versions of co-writer, you know a lot of the most current versions. So really simply, if I want to use co-writer and I'm a phonetic speller, so if I wanted to talk, we have just visited the circus, and I want to talk about the animals that we saw. If we would talk about, oh, well, I saw elephants. If I'm a phonetic speller, I'm probably going to start elephants with an L. And I'm going to sound it out, L. And there's elephants.
Elephants.
So now I make my selection one of two different ways. I either click my mouse on the word or I hit the number that's associated with that guess, whichever is easier for the student.
Elephant.
And now co-writer starts to predict ahead. So if I were talking about elephants and giraffe.
Capital I.
So giraffe. So let's spell that. Oh, and there's giraffes.
Giraffes.
Live
at
the circus.
Circus.
When I add punctuation, it will read the whole sentence to me.
Elephants and giraffes live at the circus.
And gives me that text-to-speech then to help me be able to edit my work for Mechanic. So that's the basics of co-writer. Now I can control and customize. I can make the prediction box. If you're not a Green Bay Packers fan like I am, you can change your background color and text color to meet individual student needs. You can change the number of guesses. But one thing that has been changed in co-writer here is our number one tech support column is if I need to write numbers. So if I wanted to write 2018, well, how would I write 2018? Because if I hit a 2, I'm going to get the word he sent to the attached application. So it used to be you would have that little arrow over on the side, and that would get you to your true keys. Apparently that wasn't clear enough. So what we did is we gave you the little 1, 2, 3, and now what it does is it opens up an on-screen keyboard where we can type our numbers, or we can go to our keys on our keyboard and type from there. When I'm ready to continue my writing, so 2018 is...
It.
Going. Going to.
Be a.
Be a.
Big.
Great.
Great deal.
I'm looking for great year.
Success. Capital I. This.
So here now I have my sentence. So that 1, 2, 3 is there for me to be able to type numbers. So that's something that we hopefully will help people feel more comfortable with that. You also notice here the little book icon. So the book icon is put there. That is our topic dictionary. So the topic dictionaries are, again, what that is it's adding words on a particular subject matter, and it's adding it directly to and creating another dictionary for co-writer to write from. So if we're writing on current events and we wanted to write about Brett Kavanaugh, we can
Brett Kavanaugh.
Click on that. It creates a topic dictionary, and now I have all the words that are associated with Brett Kavanaugh. If I finish with that and we go to science and we want to go talk about the circulatory system, create the topic dictionary on the circulatory system, and now all of those words, aorta, ventricle, white blood cells, are now going to be available for me. So hopefully we've made that, again, trying to be right in the line of sight of the students and remind them, hey, we need to be using these topic dictionaries. And when I'm ready to actually be able to go ahead and write, now I click on my pencil and I have my circulatory topic dictionary. There's aortic.
Aortic. Stenosis.
Stenosis is
usually
the
most part.
Narrowing. We got narrowing. Narrowing of largest blood vessel.
Blood vessel
in the body.
Aortic stenosis is the narrowing of the largest blood vessel in the body.
Okay. So all of those words are available for me now to write about that. So again, right here in my line of sight. Here this is where I'm going to find my text-to-speech. So if I wanted to now, instead of using my word prediction to write, if I wanted to use my voice, I need to have a microphone. So we'll go ahead and I'm using my built-in microphone. So when I click on that, so now when I click on that, that's going to actually turn on my microphone and allow me now to speak my sentences. Blood leaves the heart through the aorta on its way to the rest of the body via artery, period. Arteries lead to capillaries, which distribute the blood, oxygen, and food to cells in all areas of the body, period. Wastes are returned via the bloodstream in veins, period. When I click on my microphone again, that stops. Now, if I want to go back and now write using co-writer, now I have co-writer now available for me to go ahead and do that. So hopefully we've made this a little bit easier. So in combining our voice to text, the ability to create topic dictionaries. Also, if we know students need to write across all areas, so here I'm using co-writer instead of using it in Google Docs. Now I'm using it in an online journaling program in Penzu. Or if I need to respond to something, what I can actually do is come up here and go to different websites. So we will hop on and go to here we'll go to the Laura Ingalls Wilder pageant in South Dakota and my super fast internet here. I should have probably already had that page. But once I have that, and while that loads, I'll just hop over and we'll do a quick Google search. So if we're in middle school and we are doing a Civil War unit and we want to talk about the Battle of Bull Run. There's the Battle of Bull Run. Here, I'll just click on the first, which just happens to be Wikipedia. What I can do up here in CoWriter, I can come down and I can have it create a topic right from this page. Click on that, and now I have a quick topic dictionary specifically to now the Battle of Bull Run. So really simple. So hopefully we've made it so obvious for students to be able to remind them to use their topic dictionaries, but also give them a number of ways to be able to create those. And then lastly, something that I'm really excited about for our students who are second language learners. In CoWriter, if I come up to my options, now this is available only in the Chrome extension. CoWriter now has the ability to support our second language learners in their native language. So we've built in a handful of second languages. So CoWriter is still predicting in Spanish. But if I tell CoWriter that my primary language is Spanish, what this will do when I come back to, let's go back to our Google Doc here. So if Spanish is my native language and I need to write, so I might simply, so I'm writing along, so I'm talking about how my, and I'm thinking of the word, but I can't think of what that word is, but I know what the word is in my native language. So if I type in C-A-S-A, notice number 5, home, gives me home. So what it did is I'm typing in Spanish, and it gives me the English equivalent of that word. Home is, oh, I can't remember the color. Blanco. Oh, blanco. Oh, that's white. White. Okay. My home is white. Okay. Also, in addition to that, if again I go back to my options here, I can actually have CoWriter predict, not just in English, but in my native language as well. So what I would do is change the prediction language. We'll say Spanish again. What it has to do is it has to download resources from the internet. So I do need an internet connection to be able to do this. And so what it's doing is it's loading the resources it needs. I need to go ahead and make sure that I activate CoWriter again here. Notice now CoWriter is predicting in Spanish. So if I come here and I want to write a sentence, I want a drink of water. So, yo, quiero, un vaso de agua. Yo quiero un vaso de agua. Please forgive me. I do not speak Spanish, so if I have misspelled something or typed something incorrectly, you will have to forgive me. I had to ask somebody how to write that sentence in Spanish. But here what we're trying to do is, again, CoWriter has been used for years, primarily prescriptively for students with disabilities. But what we know from years and years of use of CoWriter is CoWriter helps students become better writers. Well, it's not just our students with disabilities that are struggling. And writing has an increased importance in the college and career readiness. And so now through UDL principles, co-writer has this much wider applicability, especially with our younger population. Think about typically developing 5, 6, and 7-year-olds. They oftentimes have great oral language, but they have very limited writing vocabulary because they're still developing alphabetic principles, phonological and phonemic awareness. And so half the words that they spell are spelled incorrectly. Co-writer is a great tool to help them while they're writing the word, but they will still get the word that they are looking for, like starting elephant with an L. Any questions on co-writer? I'll hop back over to stop sharing here.
So this is your co-presenter. How long has that language translation been available? Because that's brand new to me. Both Kristen and I are blown away.
It came out in the spring, and then a couple of voices have been added, and we're constantly adding additional things. So the latest update was probably about 3 weeks ago and added a couple of voices, but the ELL support first became available late last spring.
Okay, and that's just in the Chrome extension because it needs
just
to
in the Chrome extension.
Yeah, for Google Chrome. Wow.
Yes. But if you're using Microsoft 365 on a computer, you still have it. Because what we're doing is we're tapping into some of the resources that Chrome allows us to do. So not all of that technology is indigenous to Don Johnston. We're actually tapping into some technologies that Google and Chrome allow us to do. So the only thing that you would not be able to do, you would not get this on an iPad because you can't run the Chrome browser and co-writer, because on an iPad you cannot run multiple apps at the same time. So Chrome would be your app.
Okay. That's fantastic. I don't see any other questions.
Okay, awesome.
All right. Well, we'll talk a little bit about testing accommodations, and we can talk about this together. But as many of you might know, Kristen Leslie, our director at SETI, worked with the statewide group to put together some accommodation guidelines for state testing. And the most recent written version of that from last spring does say that Co-Writer 7 and Co-Writer Universal desktop versions can be used with online SBAC. The student must have accommodations written into the IEP, and the student must have used it on a regular basis. And Dave mentioned that earlier. You never want to introduce Co-Writer to a student at testing time or just right before testing time. They need to be really comfortable with it before you have them use it on a test. And then they don't get access to all the features. There's a lot of restrictions you have to put in, and there's instructions on how to do that and restrict the features that are not allowed. So as far as I know, it's the only word prediction software that's allowed. Is this Kristen? Do you have something to add? Okay, I thought I heard somebody. So that's significant, and there are specific directions about how to do that. So the more you can get teachers and staff to be using or teaching Co-Writer to their students early on in the year, then they'll be prepared and be able to have it written into their accommodations and be able to use it on testing. So it is quite a process to get that set up and, to make sure that it's in use and students have learned it ahead of time. But note that in this informal assessment area, any tool can be used, and really anytime a teacher is doing a lesson or providing their own classroom assessments, we encourage that teacher to be using these tools as part of the assessment process. Just noting that this is what the student performed and what they're able to write with use of whatever support. This is kind of what we do when we write IEPs. So the more we can get teachers using these UDL tools all year long and on a daily basis, they're better prepared than when the tests come around. And, an interesting discussion too is, if a student, I've heard this, if a student has learned to use a word prediction tool and they're using them on a daily basis, but they get to the testing environment and that is not accessible to them, have we done them a disservice? Because now all of a sudden they don't have the tool that they've been trained with. But
No.
so I don't know if you, yeah, do you have a thought?
Absolutely. So, Rose, you know my story. I mean, my wife and we have 8 children, all adopted through foster care. And 5 of my children are boys, and 4 was like the magical age. All of my boys, with the exception of 1, was 4 years old when they came to us. And we absolutely use co-writer with them. As soon as, I would say, in kindergarten, first grade is usually where we started to introduce that. And we used it with them mostly with email, a way for them to be able to attach co-writer to email. It was a way for them to communicate with other foster families that they might have come from or biological families. And co-writer was there to help them tell their stories. That was to them. And it allowed them to use words that they cannot spell themselves. All of my 5 boys, with the exception of 1, are typically developing, whatever that is. And as they got older, they have naturally just walked away from co-writer. Only one of my boys is a co-writer user today, and that is my high school junior who cannot get 2 sentences out without the use of co-writer. But my other 4 boys, by the time they got into 4th and 5th grade, they had pretty much just stopped using co-writer. They didn't need that support, but yet they continued to be better spellers in paper pencil, and it also helped them become better readers. And that makes sense because when they see those words, they hear those words, they can't help but to be more likely to read those words when they see them in print without somebody there to read it for them. So I cannot strongly enough refute that thought process.
I agree with you, actually. I found that it helps kids to produce things they wouldn't have if they didn't have the support. And hopefully, as they learn it, they can take that learning with them to the test, whether they have the tool or not. But that said, there is a process for trying to get that, to get the on-screen. I'm going to just go to my little note at the bottom. So even though the desktop versions are allowed right now, currently the web-based Chrome extensions are not allowed at this point, but OSPI is recognizing the need to get that figured out, and I believe they are working on it. We just haven't heard any update on that. So even though we're restricted to the desktop versions right now with restrictions, I know they're working on a way to do the web-based versions, primarily because I think Dave and I were talking earlier, it was probably at least 4 or 5 districts that we know in our area that are Chromebooks for one-to-one. They're totally locked out of co-writer. If you have a Chromebook right now, you can't use co-writer on a state test. So that's a work in progress. So if anyone has anything to add to that, chime in. But that's what we know about state testing right now for word prediction. So I just want to kind of wrap this up. And again, framing the before and after this whole webinar around UDL, what are tips for success with co-writer universal implementation as a UDL tool? In my prior district, in Kent School District, we've had co-writer universal as a district-wide tool funded through our Gen Ed IT department for probably the last 4 years, 3 or 4 years. I kind of lost track. I have to think about that. So how did we get there, and how do you move toward a model like that? Not everyone can get there, but it happened with this building of collaboration between special ed, educational technology, and instructional services, so everyone can see the benefit, and then we see that there's a broad audience of students that can really benefit from this tool, not just students on an IEP. And then focusing on UDL principles in general ed classes, which support inclusive practices for all students. When you get people in the UDL mindset for the general ed classroom, they start seeing that, oh, if we had co-writer available to all students in this room, some of them would absolutely need it, most would benefit, and all of them would enjoy using it. So I think that's another thought. And then how do you build capacity? I think you want to train key personnel in each of your buildings to know what tech resources are available and how to get training. So for co-writer, who can you target in each of the buildings you're in that you can show co-writer to and have them help you spread the word and get other staff on board with it. And then coaching staff on site as building teams, so maybe going out to a school and getting a team of people there that you coach or teach about the program, and then they can, integrate that as a team. And then any on-demand training resources, such as this recorded webinar or resources on Don Johnston website, or even creating your own on-demand trainings that you can have hosted on your district's website for teachers. So anyway, those are just some ideas on how to promote that in that way. And do you guys have any final questions?